Hello, future people. Welcome to Getting Tabled. I'm Jason the Bruce, and today we're taking a look at the brand new version of the Dropfleet Commander rulebook. So this is Dropfleet Commander 1.5. When the news of this first dropped, I'll be honest, I was rather disappointed. Honestly, because I've been really looking forward to a second edition, and this is pretty much confirmation that we won't be getting second edition for at least a little while now. And I am on the record of saying that second edition is quite desperately needed in a couple of areas. This rulebook, as far as I understand, is pretty much it's a cleanup. 1.5 tends to be very similar to what Mantic did with Kings of War recently, where it's kind of like we're putting everything together, we're making it easier to read. The old rulebook was kind of hard to find your way through. We struggled with it back in the Hot LZ days and the Getting Tabled days, honestly finding your way through that rulebook. This is nice and thin. It's just the rules. There's a very brief lore in here, and an update and a fix that disappoints me. I'll let you guess which one. Getting Tabled has announced their very first giveaway. This Shaltari fleet was purchased with my own money for this express purpose. In order to enter the competition, you need to join us on Patreon. For every month of support, which is only $2 a month, you gain one entry into the competition between now and the recording on April 2nd, 2023, which is the 4-year anniversary of our podcast. You will get the Shaltari Dreadnought, the Shaltari Starter Fleet, the Shaltari Frigate Box, and the Shaltari Cruiser Box. This will all go out to one person. We will be covering it. Please understand that in order to enter the competition, you cannot live in a country where it's illegal to win prizes. There are countries out there that fall under this banner, and it's not something that we can control. This has all been purchased with my own money. None of this is funded. None of this is sponsored. I have purchased all of this with the express purpose of thanking one particular person that supports us on Patreon. That person will be drawn at random on the recording that we do on April 2nd, 2023. If you join us on Patreon, one of the things that you can do is listen to our recordings live as they're done through the Discord. Please consider supporting us. It's only $2 a month. We would really, really appreciate your time. So, first things first, we've got some very nice artwork here. This, however, is exactly the same artwork that features on the front of the two-player starter set. Sorry, the original two-player starter set. So this is not a new piece of artwork. It is an existing one. But it's always been one of my favourite pieces of artwork. Yeah. Continues over the page. We get a brief history of what the game is about and a really good look at the factions. It's worth noting, this is an embossed cover as well, which is really nice. So you get that waxy looking, it doesn't quite show up. So it's the ships so the logo, that ship, and that ship. And then on the back, it's the logos and the TT Combat logo and the Dropfleet logo. So really nice. It's always been a very nice piece of artwork, that. And like I said, this is not actually that thick. We have 64 pages. So it's going to be a lot easier to find your way through this. Version 1.5. We've actually got credits, including We Miss You, Buddy. We miss you a lot. Now, this is because Lewis had been working on these rules before he left. There's still a few things to be released that Lewis was part of. I know that there's at least, I don't know what they are, but I know that there's at least a couple of characters for Rumble Slam that he was working on. Because it's been mentioned in a few places. So yeah, I like the fact that companies do this. Unfortunately, there's some larger companies that don't, but that's another story. A little bit about TT Combat, and then obviously we're coming into the contents. That is a piece of art we've seen before as well. There is our full version of the artwork in question from earlier. And that's it for the lore. You just get your brief description. So I actually like this because the lore is not what this book is about. This is essentially your gamer version of your rule set that did not exist before now. Like, back in the day, Games Workshop used to release like your big full-on rulebook and then a mini rulebook that was just for your games. And it was usually A5, same size as this. So this is clearly taking inspiration from that idea as well. For 3rd edition, Kings of War did exactly the same thing. So I do like the fact that they've done this. This is going to make it much easier when I'm taking this around to teach people because A, I don't have to try and find my way through that old rulebook. I love the layout of it, but it's really, the old one was really hard to find your way through. This will be a lot easier. A little bit of a description. So I'm going to skim through this to some extent, and I'm going to kind of point out the things that stood out to me. I have had a brief look through this. So there's no huge major changes on this. It's all just being cleaned up, which was, in some cases, something that needed to be done. But it's disappointing because what I was really wanting was an actual proper full-on 2nd edition because I feel the game needs it at the moment. Don't get me wrong. I love this game. This is an absolute phenomenal game. But it's kind of reaching a point where it's showing its age, and I think it needs to be updated a little bit. Talking about dice, talking about group cohesion. A nice reminder because it's something that we all forget sometimes. Admirals. I love this. Disagreements. The rules are written to cover as many conceivable eventualities as possible, but there will always be occasions where obscure situations are not addressed. If rereading the relevant rules section does not provide an answer to a problem, and the players cannot agree on how to proceed, simply have one player roll a dice. On a 1 to 3, interpretation is correct. On a 4 to 6, it is the other. I like this. I like the fact that this is actually in the rules. Because it doesn't just say, you should get along, it actually gives you a solution. Orbit, I don't believe there's been any major changes here. Game term sequences. This is still, like, this is a very clever solution to the problem of how everything works. These bases are a little fiddly. I mean, I say a little fiddly. They are very fiddly. That is something that I don't really have an answer to, but I feel that's something that would need to be changed in a 2nd edition. There are some third-party alternatives that help, but that means buying them from other people, which I'm sure TT Combat would prefer it didn't happen. Orbital decay, going through a few things. Silent running. Ramming. So you need to be a medium or large. You need to have 2 or few hull port. Yeah, so there's no changes there. Going through. For those of you who are watching, before I get there, no cheating, but let me know if you know what the correction is that I'm going to be pointing out. Crippling. So I don't believe there's been any major changes on this either. Other than the fact that we now have the Dreadnought one as well, obviously. Catastrophic, which again, we've got the Dreadnought there as well. So, there's been no major change here. This is one section of the rules that really does need to be touched up. There's wording that's kind of fixed in a couple of places. But I didn't really notice anything significant here. Launch assets. More launch assets. Fighters. All right, so now we're getting into building the fleet. Again, no huge differences here. This has been updated because this was updated on the website. The old version didn't have. This has all been changed pretty much. Generally speaking, most people tend to play in the Clash area. Generally speaking, I'm not saying that it's not possible to play the other ones. I'm just saying, generally speaking, that's where most people tend to play. Oh, well, sorry. Most people tend to play around the 2,000 point mark, is the point, or 1,500 points. Pathfinder's line. So this is all the same, and then we're going into our scenarios. Again, no real huge changes here. Space stations. Placing scenery. Scenery doesn't really place a huge part in this game, other than the debris fields. In a second edition, I'd kind of like to see something more happen here. Also, TT Combat. I'd really like to see some MDF templates released for these. The cardboard ones are fine, but for those of us that want to do custom stuff, it's kind of hard to do this and get them to match. That'd be, I feel, something that would be very cheap for you to do and something that I feel would sell. I'm not saying that you're going to make millions of dollars off them, but I think you would actually sell a few of them. Special rules. So, some of this will be from the original book. Some of this will be from Battle for Earth. So, from memory, Ablative Armor is from Battle for Earth. Dreadnought certainly is. So that is obviously a change from the original rulebook because this was originally split across 2 rulebooks. I've definitely gone past it. Okay. Aha, here we go. Okay. Rest in peace, Traffic James. Now, we made a joke about this at one point when we had our interview with Lewis, and the response from Lewis, in all fairness, I believe was in jest, was that Traffic James would always stay because they love the spelling mistake. For those that are unaware, the original rulebook had a spelling mistake in this area, and it said Traffic James. Now, obviously, this is a mistake that at some point had to be fixed because that was a pretty significant error. It just didn't get picked up by Hawk Wargames when they were doing the game initially. And that happens with all games. For those of you that want to go out and make a joke about it, like seriously, everybody makes typing errors in every rulebook they ever make. It is quite common. But this was one that the community had fallen in love with. And from my understanding, most of the TT Combat staffing loved it as well. Because it was just one of those things that took off. There was the picture for the groups all changed regularly, and there was a picture of Traffic James there. Traffic James was also introduced into Rumble Slam to give him actual life. There's actually an unboxing that you can find up here. So they have done really well. Look, this is... it's not really a new rulebook, which is obviously why it's formatted this way as well. So the long and short of it is that this is something that was very important. Being able to go through this to find the answers to your question is much easier than going through the last 2 rulebooks. The original rulebook, as much as I loved it, was not easy to find answers in. It was difficult to find your way through. And Battle for Earth, mostly being for Drop Zone and having a little bit for Drop Fleet, was nice, but it meant that you had to fight through all of the stuff that wasn't relevant to find the Drop Fleet stuff. So having one rulebook where everything is together, that's only that thick, is definitely a good thing. The reason for my disappointment, all jokes about Traffic James aside, is simply because I was really hoping that the next big release was going to be the 2nd edition. Clearly that's not the case now. This, to me, is sign that we won't be getting that anytime soon. And I literally mean I'm not expecting it for at least a couple of years at this point. And that's really disappointing to me because I think it's going to hurt the game. I really feel like the game needs a very big kick to get it boosted again. I really feel that the game needs it and deserves it, quite frankly. But don't get me wrong. This is good. This is definitely helpful. Use this as your opportunity to go out and get some games in. Use this as your opportunity to introduce some people to the game. This is an amazing game that is worth your time. If you haven't played it, you should. Let us know what you think. Were you excited for this? Were you not excited for this? Do you not really have much of an opinion? Have you played Dropfleet? Drop down into the comments and let me know. And if you want to enter our competition for our Patreon, head across to patreon.com/gettingtabled. You've made it through to the end of another video. Your next mission is to hit subscribe and comment down below. If you'd like to reach out to the team, consider doing that, gettingtabled@gmail.com. Consider subscribing to our Patreon. For only $2 a month, you get early access to almost every single video that we do. Our most active social media is facebook.com/gettingtabled. It's where you'll find everything first. There's also a Discord. There's an invite on screen right now. If you type that in, it'll give you instant access. If you're on Twitter or Instagram, you can find us at gettingtabled. It's not the most active, but it's something we're trying to use more all the time. Come and check out Jason the Bruce at Twitch. He does both video game and hobby content. And of course, without question, play more games.